Hello friends, it's so great to be with you. Thanks for inviting me into your session today. We're going to talk about some of the things that have led up to and some of the resources that we've developed for United Methodist Women as we prepare these flexible structures that you've heard so much about. So we'll talk a little bit about the history. We will talk a little bit about the questions that we're trying to address. And I'll also share some of the resources that are available to you as you think about the kinds of flexibilities that will help you in your part of the world, in your part of the church, in your part of your community to be engaged in mission and to help women, children, and youth around the world. So let's get started by telling the story. And the story is that the current tagline, mission statement, outcome areas, and galvanizing impact that has taken us to this point really came from you. Surprising? I hope not. Some of you, I'm sure, remember being at what we used to call regional school when, in the last quadrennium, when the directors and staff came to you with a proposed mission statement. It was the result of some careful planning and some thinking, and we quickly learned it used a few too technical terms. We asked you what advice you would give us, and although many of you were very polite and careful, the advice was, try again. And so we did. So the current statement of mission, that when United Methodist Women are at our best, we are turning faith, hope, and love into action on behalf of women, children, and youth around the world, came from that effort. I'm so grateful that you sent us back to work on it again, and that the board heard you, and that we came up with this alternative. Building on that, and building on our purpose, we have been saying what structure is necessary. How should we engage the world in the 21st century? And we don't want to leave behind any of our history. We don't want to leave behind the power that we have. We don't want to leave behind any of the building, supportive, creative fellowship that is so critical to our communities. But we do think that we have to organize differently. So one of the things that I want to suggest to you is to think about what United Methodist Women in your church or your district or your conference might look like if you didn't already know. If you were going to create it today, what would you put into place? And what would you want to know before you did? I'm sure, just like the women who preceded us, that you would start by praying. We begin our work nested in the confidence that God has work for us to do. We hear God calling us by name, equipping us, and really impelling us into mission because of our sense of all that needs to be corrected for God's people to know that they are loved. And remember, all the people are God's people. So begin with prayer. Think about where God is already at work. And think about where the most vulnerable people in your community or your state or in the areas of the world about which you're particularly concerned live. How would you organize to resource them? How would you organize to resource each other? How often would you meet? How many people would you bring together? All these questions are open for your consideration. Now, I would repeat for this group that I don't think that change is essential for change's sake. So if in fact you have been meeting the needs of your community and you have been incorporating new women as they join your congregation. And if your United Methodist Women is as diverse as the community that you intend to serve, and if you have the people with the skills for the functions that you already know you need, don't change a thing. But if you wish you could raise more funds, be more effective, recruit younger women, interest people who have not been interested in United Methodist Women at earlier points in their journey, if you wish there was more that you could do, then this is an opportunity to think about how you would do it and what resources you would bring together once you've started to pray together and think together and work together. We're engaged in a planning process, a process that includes looking at the community and the world, and that includes looking at our community. Who are the women who are already invested? And who are the women who could be invested? Do you have people who could take up the work of social action in your group if it were just divided into topic areas? Do you have people who would be glad to represent the community to the district or the district to the conference, if only they didn't have to do X, Y, or Z other task? Are there people who wish they could resource the spiritual growth retreat or the day apart if they didn't have to come to a whole list of other meetings? Just think about the people who are there, who could partner with you to add depth and strength to the community and to the work that we're about. I commend to you a group of people who want to work on the shape of United Methodist Women to come, and I commend to you a consideration of the needs, the women in your community, the women in the community surrounding your congregation, and the vision of what United Methodist Women might look like if twice as many women in your congregation were involved, or the women in the unit already were matched by an equal number of women in the community who came to your church to join United Methodist Women. You do know that you don't have to be a member of the United Methodist Church to be a member of United Methodist Women. So some of your resources may be people who don't worship at your congregation on every Sunday morning, but they might still love to be engaged in the work of United Methodist Women. So there's a lot of listening and thinking and asking questions that we can do together. We have a variety of resources that are available to us as we think about organizing for mission. One of them is, surprisingly enough, the U.S. Census. Did you know that the reports of the U.S. Census are available online? If you have ever wondered who is in your community, you can search by the zip code of your church or local school and see what the census data shows about who is there. You can do it in statistical areas and other things. So there are some research tools online that are available to you, and many cities and counties also have similar resources about who is in your place. And that might help you to think about the world that is right at the doorstep of your congregation. Another resource, of course, is the new handbook. The new UMW handbook for this quadrennium is available at the Resource Center, and it has some questions and some strategies that we have culled from other places that will address how some people have thought about organizing for mission at this time. Some of the people who are thinking about this are thinking that they can share the work among a bigger group. And some are thinking that they can more efficiently organize with a smaller group to do some of the specific things that are needed in their place. Still others are grouping together to decide that they could have a flexible size, with some people continuing right through the year and others being part of the planning for specific events or for specific purposes. All of these things are possible in the flexible structures which we're just beginning to imagine. We will also be continuing to resource the committees on nomination through the conference, and we have been doing a series of web-based training as well as in-person training at Leadership Development Days. I stay in touch with the conference presidents both at Leadership Development Days and through periodic conference calls throughout the year. And we've heard some really great stories about how you all have begun to think about your flexible structures. So I encourage you to share some stories with your conference president, because she'll be glad to have things to tell when we get together by phone and share with each other. We're also going to be building an online community organizing for mission at United Methodist Women Online. If you're not already a member of that community, you can find the link right at the bottom of our homepage at www.unitedmethodistwomen.org. And there's a little green U that says United Methodist Women Online. So connect with us. Tell your stories, reach out for some models from people in other places. We know that we're continuing to work. We're working on the standing rules. We're thinking about the conference structure themselves. And we have several conferences that are prompted to think about their structure because the overall conference structure is changing. In some cases, conferences are getting together to form new conferences like Great Plains or Rio, Tejas or Rio, Texas, depending on how you like it. And in other places, conferences are forming new district structures, and that's giving people an opportunity to think differently about how they organize for mission. So some of that work is being done at conference and district levels. In other places, local units, young women, college women, structures that go across some of the traditional boundaries are being formed because they're being brought together by particular issues or the age group that they want to serve or their connection with one of the national mission institutions. So you'll find that different emphases will result in different shapes of the organization. And I really think that that's just what we need. So think about models as potential resources. Think about questions as resources. Think about the census data and other data in your town. And think about the work that the national mission institutions and other women, children, and youth serving institutions are doing to research the needs as part of your information. Many of our national mission institutions and other food banks and refuges, community centers have done recent reviews to see what the needs are as their communities change and as the funding patterns change. And so you will find that the Salvation Army or the community center or the National Mission Institution may have an analysis of the community that is of interest to you as well. So I encourage you to think about the information, think about the questions, bring them together as you think about the work that you want to take on for this time. It doesn't have to be the work of a decade. Can be the work for this year. Surround that with prayer. Bring it to each other, but don't forget to bring it to God. To look for inspiration, to ask to be made aware of where God is already at work. Because you know we have confidence that God is at work in the world. And it's our incentive, our assignment to follow God in that work. So bring your questions, bring your data, bring your community, come to God, and then share the stories about what happens. Post them on the online community, post them on the Facebook page, share them with your conference president, and let's work together as we seek to serve God, our communities, and in fact women, children, and youth all over the world as we raise our gifts to mission, as we contribute, as we volunteer our time, and as we bring our commitments for advocacy to the town, to the county, to the state, to the federal government, to make the world more loving and just, to take us to faith, hope, and love in action for women, children, and youth at your doorstep and all around the world. Thanks for being in this journey with us and for looking for all of these resources so that we can do the work that God has assigned to us for this time.